All right, so unraveling problems with health can be so tricky, but one of the things that can be behind so many of the symptoms that we experience is inflammation throughout the body. And so when I was at a summit recently listening to a lot of functional practitioners, every speaker again and again kept bringing up the same list of highly inflammatory foods that create inflammation in the body. And so these were medical doctors who moved to functional practices to widen the options for meeting the needs of their patients. Instead of a pill for every ill, they discovered that many imbalances can be addressed by removing certain foods from the diet. So the crazy thing is, it was the same list every time. I just kept hearing it over and over. So they call these high intolerance foods. And oddly enough, they are the ones that I learned along the way made my body not feel well. And if I even cheat a little bit on some of these foods, I will get a headache. I will not feel well. I will get some of my chronic fatigue symptoms back. And so try this. It's a really important piece to the puzzle. So here's the list. The high intolerance foods were gluten, soy, corn, eggs, dairy, peanuts, nightshades, artificial sweeteners, and sugar. So I know that sounds like what's left to eat. Believe me, you can eat great meals, but avoid these. And cool enough, there's more and more resources out there to help us. The Whole30 program, it's a 30-day removing of most of these inflammatory foods. They keep eggs in theirs, so I have to skip those ones because eggs do bother me. But you can eliminate these and then reintroduce one and see how your body responds, and you'll find out. It doesn't take much. Some of these I can have a little bit and I'm okay. But if I do it a few times in a row, like a few days in a row, it's like, okay, no, my body didn't like that. I got my symptoms back again. So you really are your own barometer. You can figure out which foods trigger you. But start by removing them and then reintroducing them. So if you're looking for good recipes, go to, I actually have a whole group that was put together for our team that has shopping lists and recipes and a Whole30 program for 30 days. And so if you want to be added over there, just let me know and I can get you connected. It's on Facebook, so you would need to have a Facebook profile in order to get into that one. So let's go through these one by one. What are the good swaps that you can make to replace these foods in your recipes? Here are some substitutions that our family uses all the time, and we don't even miss the other foods, oddly enough. I have no desire to go back to eating the way that I used to eat. So what do we do for gluten? So gluten is grains, right? Like so many of the grains, but there are grains that don't have gluten. Like you could still do rice. We can still do millet. And actually, with nightshades and inflammation, I think it's called lectins. If you look at Dr. Stephen Gundry's work, he talks about some of the inflammation and what causes it and things like that and how to remove it. So nightshades were a piece of his puzzle. Tomatoes was one of the ones he was like, ooh, you got to take those out. So look up nightshades. They could be a piece of your puzzle too. They're certainly one of my triggers, though I can do Ningxia, wolfberry, goji berry, even though it is mildly a nightshade. It doesn't bother me. And I can do some seasonings like chili peppers and things like that, even though I can't eat peppers. So anyway, it takes experimenting. But back to gluten. Sorry for the tangent there. So we substitute a lot with nut meals. For baking, I will use almond flour. It's great in a pie crust. I will use coconut flour for thickening things. I will use millet flour for gravies. And stuffing, I will use millet in a turkey, and it tastes great. Arrowroot starch works really well for the binding agent. So if you're doing a nut meal, you need something to make it stick together, and so arrowroot starch works well for me in place of cornstarch. Gluten-free oats are fine. It's just that oats and wheat are so often grown close together that they get cross-pollinated, and so you can get some wheat in there. So I look for the gluten-free oats. Now, some people can tolerate the Einkorn Wheat, non-hybridized version of wheat. Wheat has been hybridized for like the last 100 years over and over and over, and so the gluten content has gotten really high in it, whereas the Einkorn Wheat that Gary Young preserved and still is sold in Young Living, some people can tolerate it because it's much lower in the gluten. It's worth a try. Some people can tolerate spelt. We did that for a while. Some people can tolerate kamut. So experiment a little bit. We mostly, like, I'm just trying to go low carb, so I avoid a lot of grains anyway, so I tend to lean toward the nut meals because they tend to fit a little bit better in the goals that I have for my blood sugar, and they just keep me really even. I find grains turn into sugar really fast in the blood, and so I don't want the elevated blood sugars and then the big drops. I try to keep as even as I can. There's a lot of diabetes in my family, and I don't want to go there, so yeah. Okay, so that's gluten. Corn is just really one of the highest genetically modified products, and so it can really create elevated blood sugar, and it's an inflammation causer. So in place of nacho chips, we use something called bonitos. They're actually yummy. They're made of rice and beans. They're really good. Rice wraps we use for a base for our salmon melts, or when we used to have pizza. A green superfood wrap. They have a lot of flax as its base, but then have lots of greens in them. They're really tasty and work great for sandwiches, so they're kind of our sandwich wrap. Spiced almonds make a great snack. Protein bites, Lara bars, just not the ones with peanuts in them. So all of those are great options in this kind of eating. And then soy can mimic estrogens and cause hormone imbalance. And then, soy comes in lots of forms and is in a lot of things. So you don't want soy sauce. You don't want soy as a protein. And not soy milk. So instead, we do almond milk. And we found this new one recently. Just this past year, we've been able to get it at Costco. It's called Milkademia. So it's based on macadamia nuts, and it's really high in calcium, which is something I really was looking for, and it tastes delicious, so we love it. Hemp milk is good, coconut milk, all those things are in place of soy milk and dairy. You can get chocolate without the soy lecithin in it, and so the made good chocolate chips work really well. Coco Camino gets a good recommendation. It's also ethically sourced and fair trade, which I really care about. And so, and then one of the ones that won our taste test when we were doing different chocolates was Divine chocolate bars. They're fair trade, have wonderful flavor options that don't have the soy lecithin or dairy in them. So that is a yummy option too. Eggs can be an awesome source of quick, easy protein, and if you can eat them, go for it. I miss eggs probably more than any of these others. But for those of us with a chronic illness, it can be a source of abdominal cramping, fatigue, headaches, and uncomfortable bloating. And I get headaches really fast with eggs. So in baking, you can use flax meal and just let it sit in some water until it kind of absorbs it and it gets gelatin-like, and it acts very much like an egg in recipes. And so basically 1 tablespoon of flax meal with 3 tablespoons of water, and you've got an egg. So that's what we call our egg in all our baking. For breakfast recipes, like really I've leaned towards smoothies. I can't eat eggs, and I haven't found a great option for a hearty breakfasty kind of meal. We do have some pancake recipes that we can eat, which are a yummy once in a while thing. So there's one of our recipes is buckwheat flour, and buckwheat is one of the ones that doesn't have gluten in it. So buckwheat pancakes, pretty awesome. We've also found a paleo one, but it hasn't been around in Costco the last few times I've been. Okay, so then dairy. So dairy can cause things like skin breakouts, sinus congestion. I wonder how many of those chronic sinus infections I could have avoided if I'd known to avoid dairy sooner. Headaches, gut issues. Take a break from dairy for a few months, let it out of your system and see how you feel. For substitutes, we find if you're looking for a creamy sort of texture to, say, a sauce or something, coconut cream is awesome. It works really well. You can actually make a whipped cream out of it. You can also puree cashews, and that on noodles tastes like a cheese sauce to me. Nutritional yeast extract has a cheesy kind of Parmesan flavor. You can sprinkle it on things. And Daiya cheese has improved their grated cheese option. So, yeah, it's still not cheese, but it's better than it used to be. They're coming. So the milks listed above work really well for cereal or milk. Milk substitutes on your cereal. And one of our best cereals is to make your own granola. Then you know what's in it, and you can make sure it's gluten-free and has no artificial sweeteners or corn syrups or things like that in there. Peanuts, as a legume, they can often impact people with candida imbalance and create inflammation. And so if you are having an inflammation problem, take peanuts out for a while. If you're looking for another kind of peanut butter, there's an awesome nut and seed butter that Costco sells. It's got cashews and a bunch of seeds together that tastes great. Like, we use it all the time. I don't miss peanut butter at all. It's great for flavor. It replaces peanut butter in recipes so that I can still make our favorite peanut butter bars, O. Henry squares. I can make our peanut butter oatmeal cookies still. So if nuts are an issue, there could be just seed butters you can tolerate. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite if you can tolerate some cashews and nuts in there. And the last thing to look for is sugar and artificial sweeteners. So sugar spikes are really hard on the body, and sugar is basically food for candida. So if you're trying to heal your gut and change things, sorry guys, sugar is not going to help you. It's not going to get you there. So sucralose or aspartame as sugar substitutes, you might be surprised to hear that they're linked to type 2 diabetes, obesity, and other serious diseases. I have to be really careful with sugars or grains that convert to sugar due to candida connection so the yeast connection with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. So substitutes we use: raw honey, pure maple syrup, and my favorite is stevia because it doesn't do anything for it's no carbs, it doesn't elevate blood sugar, and it's really sweet. And so I use it every day in my smoothie to just make things taste good. Coconut sugar can be used in baking recipes. There are so many options, and don't feel discouraged. Just see what you can eat and don't focus on the things you can't. And so cheers to eating for health. If you need recipes, you can look on my blog and see what some of our family favorites are. And then I certainly can point you to some that we have found and loved from internet recipes as well. So many options for us. There are muffins we can eat. There are cookies we can eat. There are fun foods still in our diet. It's just they have different ways of making them. So hang in there. Heal. Let your body feel better. And it's worth it. It's worth it to leave these foods out of the mix for now. And who knows, as you heal, you might be able to reintroduce some. So listen to your body. See what it tells you. Take them out for a while, reintroduce a bit, see how you feel. And it's worth feeling better. It really is. Okay. See you soon.